Hello everyone, and you are watching the Writing for Doctoral Studies series. I'm Dawn Winters, and this video is designed to introduce you to the IRB process and really walk you through what the website looks like and what some of the steps are. I've found that my cohort members, that fellow doctoral students have gotten to this point without having gone through the IRB process. They get to the point of dissertation, and right when your life is getting even busier and there's even a bigger push for you to get through this process, you've got to deal with something or interact with something that's really unfamiliar. So I was lucky enough to go through the process as a part of a class, and that really introduced me, allowed me to kind of dip my toe in the water with IRB. So when I got to the dissertation process, the website wasn't so intimidating. So first of all, I want to introduce you to what IRB is, and you've probably gone over this in your Introduction to Doctoral Studies course. Maybe you even had our IRB representative on campus come to class and speak with you, or you've spoken with him, and he's a really helpful person, a really good resource to go to if you have questions through this process. But the Institutional Review Board, which is what the IRB stands for, is a committee or board on campus who evaluate research that is done with human subjects. Now this ranges all the way from survey research, and it could be a very quick survey on what food you're eating on campus on a day-to-day basis, all the way to research that is done with medical trials and with medicine. So it really encompasses a wide range of ethics review. So for the most part, the research that is done as far as the EDD program is concerned on WKU's campus, the IRB process doesn't take as long as, let's say, if we were doing an experimental study with a new medicine or a behavioral treatment. So to start the IRB process, you will have to have completed the CITI training, which is a part of the curriculum for Introduction to Doctoral Studies. That CITI training is not permanent, so you will have to watch. So if you are a part-time student, if you're kind of taking your time, which is okay, in the program, really make sure that your CITI training stays up to date. You may have to get retrained by the time you do your dissertation, but you will have to upload your CITI training certificate to the IRB net, which I'll show you here in a second. You'll also have to have a CV that you upload. So these are credentials. When you create your profile, you have to be a credentialed person to be a part of the IRB website. So a simple CV and that CITI training can really bolster, and actually I think it's a must for you to bolster your profile on IRB. Pause and edit and start. So when you go to the irbnet.org, it's going to look like this. So instead of walking you through the actual website, which tends to be a little bit overwhelming, especially your first time, I've done some screenshots and I've added them to the presentation. So this will at least give you an idea of what to do and where to go, and I want to really limit it. So my first piece of advice is allow yourself time to complete the process, because let's say that you've written your prospectus, you've gotten that turned in, you're working on your chapters 1, 2, and 3, you're ready to go, and you've got your survey ready to go, and you're going to send it out next week, and oh wait, you've got to do the IRB process, and you've never created a profile. So your research is going to be delayed. So make sure you give yourself, if you don't have a profile, make sure you give yourself at least a month, and I know that sounds like a long time, but get that process started early, and get the at least get the feel of the website started before you really jump into your research. So this is the first page that you're going to look at, and you're going to want to go to new user registration if you haven't already set up yourself on the website itself. So this is where you're going to create your profile and you're going to upload your credentials. And once you do have your profile, so this is, I'm in my own IRB net, as you can see, and I'm going to start my new research project, you're going to go to create new project. So you're going to make sure that you have details of your project in front of you when you do this, or I guess up in your mind when you do this, or else you're really going to be paused in the process. And for your dissertation, and this is once you click on that create new project, this is what's going to pop up. So don't change the Western Kentucky University unless you're watching this video and you're working with a different institution. Then you're going to want to make sure that the correct institution is there. If you've created your profile and you've connected yourself, which again, as a part of the credentialing process, you have to be affiliated with a university in order for that IRB board to kind of launch and represent you, and they will be your ethics board, so to speak. So let's say you're working with the University of Louisville or UK or an out-of-state one, then you're going to want to set yourself up not with the institution that you work for, but the institution that you are doing your research through. The title can be the title of your dissertation. It doesn't have to be, so if you're, I know that some of you, and I'm included, have gone through a couple iterations of titles. The title really is just to give yourself a marker on there. You are the principal investigator, unless if you're a part of a class where the professor is leading the investigation and you're just a part of it, then his or her name may be there. And your sponsor, which you can see here, your sponsor is, if you're doing your dissertation, you're going to want to write down your dissertation chair's name. If it's through a class, again, your sponsor may be your instructor. So once you have created that new project, it's going to go into the system, but you haven't applied for IRB yet. And I think this is where some people, they've created the project and then they wait for something to happen. So you've got to go to Forms and Templates after you created that project, and then head down to the very bottom, the WKU IRB application. So this is where you're going to want to click. And once you click on it, you're going to have a Microsoft Word document that's going to have a couple of objective questions listed, and those are really easy to fill out. Your name, your institution, your chair's name. There's going to be some signatures needed. But then they're going to ask you some open-ended application questions. Now, if you've written your prospectus, then for the most part, you could probably answer these in your sleep. You might even be able to drop in parts of your prospectus to the IRB application. But here are the questions that they're going to ask you. So they're going to want you to write a brief summary of the proposed research. Again, you can probably do this in your sleep if you've already done a lot for your dissertation. But you're going to want to include your research questions or your hypotheses and discuss your research design. You're also going to they're going to want you to discuss the sources of your subjects and your selection criteria. So if you're studying males who are in a remedial English class, so how do you know what males are taking remedial English classes? Did you ask the WKU institutional research office? Did you go around to just classes? You looked on TopNet and you saw who's teaching remedial classes and you approached professors. So how are you finding these males who are in remedial classes? You're going to describe the consent process. The tense for this will be in future tense. So you should not say, oh, I talked to these guys and they agreed to do this already. So that is not ethical. So you should not be approaching your subjects prior to IRB process. You should get this process before you have any contact with subjects. Get this process done. So future tense for consent process. That will be a definite red flag if you write in past tense, hey, I already talked to them and they're fine with it. So then you're going to work through your procedures. Now, for the most part, we're going to have, those of us in the doc program, we're going to have some simple procedural processes. At most, you may be doing a series of interviews or a series of focus groups that are really going to lend themselves to your research. But for the most part, you're working on a survey or you're working on an already existing data set. You're going to describe how you keep things confidential. Now, for the most part, and if you've read someone else's dissertation, this is where those locked files come in, the external hard drives that are password protected, and you're going to want to keep everything locked and secured and intact for at least 3 years. So you're going to want to indicate that on here. Any known or anticipated risks. So again, this is a question that those of us who aren't altering our subjects physically or mentally, the risks are really minimal, and you're going to want to explain how minimal they are. Don't take this question lightly. even if you're working with those males in remedial classes, there is a stigma that's connected to remediation that you might want to discuss. So them participating in this study on the remedial classes, it draws attention to the fact that they're remedial students. And back up to that confidentiality question, you're going to want to make sure that your subjects remain anonymous. It's very rare, maybe in a case study where you're only working with one individual and what this individual is discussing is not harmful to himself or to herself, and maybe it's even salutogenic, which means they want their story to be told and they don't want to be anonymous. So you may say, the subject, I will ask the subject, or the subject will agree to have her name published, or something along those lines. You can also discuss the anticipated benefits and the importance of the resulting knowledge. They'll ask you about that. So and this is connected to kind of your purpose of why you're doing this research. So how will this research benefit humankind? How will it benefit the current field? And it's your chance to kind of justify it. And then you're going to want to list your references. You're also on this document going to want to include your interview schedule, survey instrument, or any other data collection tool that you have. So if you say, I've got this interview schedule of 10 questions that I'm going to ask each participant, the IRB is going to want to see those 10 questions. And if there's substantive changes made once you get IRB, then you must get back on the system and submit an edit to your process. So they're also going to ask you to build an informed consent document. So attached to that previous document, WKU has included an informed consent sample letter. So everything has been built for you except these bottom paragraphs, and these can be written as 2, 3, 4 sentence paragraphs. And the audience, and it's really important to think about audience when you're writing, the audience is your participant for these paragraphs. So you're going to write in standard English, but also plain English for your participants to understand, especially if you're working with students who may be new students or younger students. You're going to want to make sure they understand the nature and purpose of the project, the procedures, any discomfort or risks, any benefits, confidentiality, and refusal or withdrawal. So this process is really unique. I do have the Writing Center's plug on here, and they can really help you answer those questions in the written form. Someone else that can help you with this process is our IRB person, who right now, if you're watching this video in the recent future, is Paul Mooney, and he's a really big help. Your professors, the people in the doc program, anyone who's gone through this process successfully and is an instructor can really help you through the process. It is something that you tend to only do